Ngayon, ang daming nagrereklamo sa DOH. But did you ask them why they cannot move? Because they are afraid of ABS-CBN. Pero minsan kasi, kapag malaki ka na, gusto mong palagi kang nauuna sa balita, doon po ang problema eh. Tinutukan po natin yung mga opisyal dahil nagreklamo sila. Do you ever have an evidence, a statement from all the 21 countries plus the United States of America? You had that news item repeated for straight 3 days. At ang sagot nyo lang sa akin, ganun eh. Yun yung instruction ng management, we heard you. I even asked, when did TV Patrol interviewed me? To Mr. Katibak, whom I respect so much, I hope you can answer my question truthfully, honestly, and as a Filipino. Ginamit niyo po ba ang DUENGVXIA para mapalapit at akala niyo ay mapapalapit kayo kay Pangulong Duterte by hitting the previous administration? You now become part of a bigger virus we call fake news and public health misinformation. I am opposed to any depletion or removal of our co-Filipinos insofar as the jobs that they have is concerned. However, we cannot just purely and simply use the cloak of protecting our employees without making sure that we stand by the mandate that was given to us. Moreover, we cannot also cover under the auspices of our employees when in fact we are actually doing some confusions in the name of public health. Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues, allow me to focus on Section 4 of Republic Act number 7966. Allow me to quickly read Section 4, Your Honors, responsibility to the public. The grantee, and in this case, ABS-CBN Broadcasting Corporation, shall provide adequate public service time to enable the government through the said broadcasting stations to reach the population in important public issues, provide at all times sound and balanced programming, promote public participation as in community programming, assist in the functions of public information and education, conform to the ethics of honest enterprise, and not use its station for broadcasting of obscene and indecent language, speech, act or scene, or for the dissemination of deliberately false information or willful misrepresentation to the detriment of the public interest, or to incite, encourage, or assist in subversive or treasonable acts. Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, I have been a doctor for several years, and mind you, one of the current viruses that we have been encountering, especially in areas where there is a huge monopoly of a media provider, is a virus that we call public health misinformation. There was a report sometime in 2014 of a flesh-eating disease. This was an exclusive report made by ABS-CBN. Namangha po kami, Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, dahil lahat naman po ng mga doktor nakakaintindi that when we actually talk about psoriasis, grave as the situation may look before the layman's eyes, nakakatakot siya minsan tingnan. Yung iba, hindi po iba, halos karamihan po ng mga pasyente ng psoriasis ay pinandidirihan, lalo na't pag meron silang mga katabi sa trabaho, sa pampublikong sasakyan. But never did we expect that this will be blown out of proportion, labeling a province, labeling, I believe, a certain town or 2 areas in that town to have had a flesh-eating disease. This actually gave a huge impact on that town. Next slide, please. What was covered in the news later on was that the Sangguniang Panlalawigan wanted an apology from our major broadcasting network. But Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, Kanina po kasi, rinig ko po ang sinabi ng ating butihing resource person who happens to be handling the news. And I'll go over it in a while, pero ang naisip ko po, ang naging tutok po ng sambayan ng Pilipino ay yung sama na loob na naramdaman ng mga opisyal, which I believe can be given credit. But did we ever think of the patient, of the family, of the hundreds or millions of psoriasis patients out there who has to live with the day-to-day stigma and discrimination, na kapag malamig ang panahon, kapag umuulan, ang kaba at takot nila cannot be beyond explanation. And here is our major TV network bloating the issue. May I be refreshed, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues, what was the action taken by the station on matters related to this?
ABS-CBN.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Deputy Speaker GARIN, and thank you for the opportunity to address your concern. I remember the story that you are referring to, and it was aired in our late-night newscast, Bandila. Hours after the airing, that story was flagged and our attention was called. We immediately launched an investigation into the erroneous airing of that story and imposed severe disciplinary actions against our airing journalists at that time. We also made sure that we tightened our editorial controls in terms of stories that were being covered and aired. I also sent a team to talk to provincial officials to see how our news division can help them in dealing with the impact of that story, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that kind response. Doon po ang problema eh. Tinutukan po natin yung mga opisyal dahil nagreklamo sila at tila nagkaroon ng resolusyon calling somebody persona non grata. But my focus is not only on our officials. Paano po yung pasyente? Paano po yung mga pamilya ng pasyenteng may psoriasis? Paano po yung patuloy na nilalait ng ibang Pilipinong, ng ibang kababayan natin, hindi nila naintindihan yung sakit? And instead of ABS-CBN being an instrument of educating our public, and unfortunately in this situation, naging tulay tayo para i-discriminate palalo yung ating mga psoriasis patients. Did you ever think of helping the family? Do you have advocacies on explaining to the general public what psoriasis is all about, how we can support them, na ayaw naman nila, subalit ito'y sakit nila, ito naman maski nakakatakot tingnan, hindi nakakapanghawa. Dahil ang naging reaksyon po ng ABS-CBN, tumutok doon po sa mga opisyal. At nakalimutan natin na yung taong nilait natin, taong may buhay at nasasaktan. At hindi lang po siya ang psoriasis patients, marami pa po sila. And they are actually good people, nagkataon lang nagkasakit, isang sakit sa balat na wala pong gamot, o kung meron mang gamot, napakamahal. Let me move, and then Mr. Chair, if I may, nakakagulat po kasi kung meron po talagang proper vetting, when your reporter went there, she was in complete personal protective equipment, na talagang visual pa lang, takot na po. I am not bringing this out in the open to demean the broadcast network. But then I'm bringing this out dahil minsan pag tayo'y lumalaki na, nakakalimutan natin na marami pong mga maliliit na tao na kapag ating nasasagasaan, walang-wala po silang kakayanang lumaban. Just like in this instance, papansinin natin dahil sila board member, sila gobernador, pero paano po ang pangkaraniwang Pilipino? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. Mr. Chair, allow me to refresh the memories of our distinguished colleagues here on a victim who was murdered in Cebu. I think the name is Christine Silawan. Previous slide, please. Okay. Nabigla po ang sambayan ng Pilipino dahil isang batang babae na napakaganda. And of course, the mother who was really grieving, the neighbors and the families grieving, wanted justice for this victim. And to refresh your memory, Your Honors, naging malaking issue po ito sa Cebu. But it was a puzzle why she was skinned, why the body looked like that. And the PNP came into the picture. When the PNP came into the picture, nagsagawa po sila ng sariling investigasyon and hindi pa po nalalaman kung sino ang may gawa nito. But apparently, again, in your station, distinguished officials of our giant network, Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, out of the blue, there was an expert who was claiming to have conducted autopsy on the victim. Can you please flash the next photo, please? The next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. That's the victim there in the middle. Meron pong isang bata na nasa gilid. At kung titingnan niyo po, napakakawawa nung batang ito. This is actually the boyfriend of Christine Silawan. Siya yung unang naituro dahil siya yung nakita na huling kasama. Pero minarapat ng karamihan na hindi ito tutukan dahil tiningnan muna at hinintay muna yung investigasyon. I don't know what the attitude has been formed. Pero minsan kasi kapag malaki ka na, gusto mong palagi kang nauuna sa balita. And sometimes, I am not blaming the officers and the management of ABS-CBN. Siguro minsan pag sobra na tayong malaki, hindi natin nababantayan yung mga maliliit na bagay. But if we look at the situation, it has a huge impact on our people. The boyfriend was alleged to have been the murderer of this victim. But the PNP refuted this. The only problem here is that the PNP was not given the platform that you gave to Attorney Acosta and to Dr. Erwin Erfe, an expert that you always publicize in your station. I agree he is a doctor, but myself being a doctor, we all know that he is not a pathologist, nor is he allowed to perform forensic pathology. Ano po ba ang nangyari? Dahil sa malawakang pagbabalita, this innocent boyfriend of the victim, ikinulong, and at his young age, he cannot understand why, while he was grieving for the death of his girlfriend, he was also placed in prison, subjected to things we cannot imagine. Nangyari po ba ito dahil siya'y anak lamang po ng isang mahirap na pamilya? Nangyari po ba ito dahil siya'y isang probinsyano na hindi alam kung paano lumaban sa ganitong klaseng laban? Ikinulong po ang batang ito habang siya'y umiiyak dahil yung kanyang girlfriend ipinatay. The only link there, may nagsabing sila ang huling nakitang magkasama sa kumbento dahil sa Kristan yung boyfriend. But because the police investigation were pointing to a lot of blank walls, they tapped the NBI, opened, I believe, a cybercrime, the experts on cybercrime came into the picture and opened the Facebook of the victim. So much so that it led them to a possible suspect, a businessman who actually wanted, who had an infatuation with this young lady, na mas may pera at mas may kaya kesa dito sa boyfriend na mahirap. Ano po ba ang nakita ng PNP? Nakita na nanlaban yung bata, hindi po siya na-rape, At yung bilang mga eksperto po, ang sabi po ng ating ibang mga pathologists is that there is a possibility that the victim was left there for a few days at posibleng nakain ng kung anumang hayop or a stray dog. And that was the explanation. But there was seemingly a sensational news claiming, this was again claimed by the public attorney's office, which for reasons we do not understand, is almost always being given an exclusive coverage by your station. At ang sinabi nga nila doon, ina-rape daw yung bata, binuhusan ng asido. This was in contrast to the findings of the real forensic pathologist under PNP. Isa po ang epekto dito. Pwede pong mawalang bisa yung kaso dahil yung totoong eksperto hindi naman nabibigyan ng plataforma kagaya ng binibigay nyo kay Dr. Erfe. But what pained me here is that we have here a young boy who was already sent to prison, and the judge in Cebu found out that it was not supported by any evidence, and there was already in the custody of the police the victim on the left, the suspect on the left, who actually confessed to the crime. Pero pilit pa rin inilabas sa balita, so much so that the president gave a directive, yung batang yan, pag pinatay niya yung isang batang babae sa Cebu, ibalik sa kulungan yan. Of course, there was confusion because sometimes, if you're a very big, almost always, if you're a very big network, and if you come out in the open at sinabi niyong, ito ang kasalanan ng isang tao, naniniwala na po yung lahat. And I was looking at our national treasurer earlier. There was actually semblance in what he was saying. Yes, at the end, after several months, nalaman din yung katotohanan. Pero hindi na ito na ilalabas masyado sa balita. But will correcting the wrong that was mentioned before, will correcting the fake expert that you tried to portray as a forensic pathologist on television, will that correct the psychological torture that this young teenage boy underwent while in prison? Next slide, please. And that's it. Ito po palagi nating footage na nakikita po. Ang sinasabi ko po, pwede pong meron kayong mga rason. But earlier, as I was listening to the opening statement of our distinguished resource person, ang sabi niyo po sa slide number 5, it is your response to a call to tell the truth and work for a cause greater than ourselves. Tama po yun. But a cause greater than ourselves is actually coming out and listening to the real experts, not to the friends of your employees or newscasters. At kung yung ating pong biktima was murdered, mas masakit po itong pangalawang biktima na sa batang at murang edad niya naikulong, pinalabas, ikinulong ulit, dahil nga po, yung eksperto na palagi niyong pinagbibigyan ng ere, hindi naman po pathologist. Next slide, please. Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, I really didn't want to open this up. But I do have high respect for ABS-CBN. As a child, nakikita ko po, nung maliit pa po ako, kayo na po ang unang bukang bibig. And even my daughter, when she was growing up, we were always excited to bond together to watch the soap operas. The good channels and the advocacies that you have made us bond together as a family and allowed us to talk about a lot of things. But as the years passed by, my eyes were starting to open to a few people whom I've known. Mga taong walang ibang ginawa kundi magtrabaho. Mga taong kinainggitan. People who are not powerful. I'm really sorry, I'm just a little bit emotional because this person, This person, hindi ko po siya lubasang kilala. Nakilala ko po siya unang-una nung nagkaroon ng Yolanda. Nakilala ko po siya nung nakikipaglaban siya sa SARS at ako po nung mga panahon na yun, wala pa po sa larangan ng kalusugan. Nakilala ko po siya kung paano siya magtrabaho nung labanan nila yung leptospirosis. At lalo ko siyang nakilala nung linabanan natin yung Ebola at yung MERS-CoV. He was the only infectious specialist in the central office of the Department of Health. He was a regular person being interviewed by your station because he was the DOH spokesperson during the time of Secretary Ona and was carried on during my time. I'm referring to the former Assistant Secretary, Dr. Lyndon Lisuy. Lyndon was a jolly person. He dedicated his life to DOH despite all the efforts from the private sector. Next slide, please. Yeah. He was always the person who gave calm to everybody when there was a lot of fake public health news. This is the person who protected your network when the flesh-eating news came out in the open. Siya po ang lumabas at nakiusap na wag nang palakihin, and siya po yung kumausap sa mga pasyenteng may psoriasis, telling them that everything will be all right, that it was not the usual thing that happens. And who will expect that Lyndon will be victimized by the impunity that sometimes happen in a very big corporation? Next slide, please. Lyndon was not really in the limelight, but he was forced to, simply because we have a lot of pandemics, we have a lot of outbreaks, we have a lot of emerging infectious diseases. And that prompted him to work hard. Lalo't lalo na po, na sa buong departamento, he was the only one who agreed not to practice and instead focus on the Department of Health. Salamat. Probably because of his hard work, when President Duterte assumed office, I'm not sure what happened, but maybe because they were looking for competent career people in the department. Director Lyndon Lisuy, who was not appointed as Assistant Secretary or Undersecretary during the previous administration, during the time of former President Aquino, by virtue of his being career and by virtue of his performance, he was appointed as Assistant Secretary. Next slide, please. And that prompted him to work harder. But sometime in December, and even in November, although there were already a lot of intrigues about him being appointed, he was always cited as somebody who did not campaign for the president, as somebody who is not really, as somebody who was a spokesperson during the time of the former president. But despite all of this, he was appointed by virtue of the career promotion inside the department. Siguro ito ay na pinagsimulan ng mga ibang matagal nang naiinggit sa kanya at ngunit hindi niya lang pinapatulan. In one of your TV stations, I remember that fully because I was about to have dinner, and when I opened up DZMM, Secretary Duque was about to be interviewed, and a person who hated Lyndon for being appointed submitted a letter to Secretary Duque. Unfortunately, even before Secretary Duque had time to peruse over it in his office, because Secretary Duque, just like all the other former secretaries of health, decided to top Lyndon for infectious disease concerns and for emerging illnesses, and even as a spokesperson. There was a 2-page letter read verbatim before the eyes of all doctors listening. Hindi lang yun. I just heard it later from colleagues that he had an ailing father who cannot sleep and who cannot eat without watching TV Patrol and without listening to DZMM. Yan po ang pangkaraniwan araw-araw. Yan yung ginagawa ng tatay niya. Yan yung ginagawa ng nanay niya. But on that night, laking gulat nila nung binasa yung 2 pahina ng sulat, a letter accusing him of corruption, a letter accusing him as a medical representative, a letter accusing him of being incompetent, a letter threatening him, and a letter calling on the President to remove him from the Department of Health. Hindi ko na po matandaan, pero sa grabe at sa dami na akusasyon doon, we saw the immediate transformation of Lyndon. He was never the same old person that we used to see him. Moreover, he cannot forgive himself for inflicting that harm on his parents. Alam mo yung palagi niyang bukang bibig na, kaya ko namang masaktan ang sarili ko. Pero yung masaktan yung nanay at tatay ko, dahil lamang po ako na-promote sa DOH, hindi po ba mas maganda na tanggalin na lang po ako bilang opisyal? But people were advising him not to give up. Why? Simply because he was the only infectious disease specialist in the whole department. And after that, he was always being ridiculed. Of course, hindi po siya payat na tao, hindi po siya, mahirap po kasi minsan pag parang kinakantsawan ka. And you're a scientist or you're a doctor who is not used to all of this. Because doctors as they are, lahat po ng mga eksperto, hindi po mahilig humarap sa media. Because you're always busy in your work. If there are doctors who will have the whole time of their life facing media, it's because they're not practicing, or it's because they are not busy with patients, or it's because they have ambitions. And a very powerful TV network like your station unconsciously can ruin the lives of many of our scientists and our doctors. That's why I decided to come out and speak up for them, because I've seen a lot of them suffer in pain. I've seen a lot of them who are brilliant scientists, but who cannot speak up when it comes to talking before radio stations and TV stations. Moreover, wala naman silang maraming kakilala sa istasyon nyo, at hindi naman sila pwedeng basta-basta pumunta na lang doon at magsabi kung ano ang kanilang nararamdaman. Next slide, please. And because of those repeated series of autopsies being conducted, so may I ask, I know, Mr. Chair, I've been thinking so hard about this. I really do not want to ask these questions. But then as a doctor, it is my moral obligation to do this. I can face all cases thrown to me because I am both a doctor and a politician. But doing this to scientists and other doctors, kawawa po sila. So ito po ang naging buhay nila. On a weekly basis, ngayon nga, yung iba naka-quarantine, yung iba nagpo-positibo. They have to, hire lawyers, spend a lot, spend everything, every centavo that's being paid to them by the government, simply because you had a series of experts that you call, binansagan niyo pong eksperto, yung mga hindi naman totoong eksperto. So may I ask the officers of ABS-CBN, first, what is your basis in labeling a doctor as a public health expert? Or, let's say in the case of autopsies, when do you call a doctor a pathologist? When do you give credential to a forensic pathologist when in fact he is not? And because you mentioned that in responsible journalism, you really have to go through to a series of vetting. And because the flesh-eating fiasco already happened before, you already have systems installed. May I ask you, do you ever have an evidence, a statement from all the 21 countries, plus the United States of America, plus all the countries who are members of the European Union, who are currently using the DUENGVXIA vaccine, maski isa lang po, meron po ba kayong nakitang ebidensya o papel man lang na nagpapakitang may namatay dahil sa DUENGVXIA?
ABS-CBN, maaari niyo pong sagutin yung 3-4 na katanungan na ipinukol sa inyo ng makapagbagdamdamin na si Congresswoman Janette Garin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Your Honor. Your Honor, in our pursuit of the truth about DUENGVXIA, we sought information from various sources, including experts, including officials, previous and present, of the Department of Health. They gave us diverse opinions and observations about the vaccine and how it was selected to fight dengue in our country. We tried our best to do our stories in a fair and balanced way. But I do understand and acknowledge your concern about the use of non-experts. In fact, I myself received feedback that some of our commentators' interviews with non-experts tended to alarm people. And as a result of that, I acted on it immediately. And we dealt with the commentator as well. We also put an end to stories on DUENGVXIA that tended to cause alarm among the general public, Your Honor.